Yeah, today I'm out shooting with the Panasonic GH6 and I'm really digging it. So finally, after more than 5 years, we have the successor to the Panasonic GH5, the Panasonic GH6. And it continues its legacy, doing things that other cameras haven't done before. We remember the Panasonic GH4, it brought to us 4K. We remember the Panasonic GH5, which brought us incredible IBIS, 10-bit recording, and great variable frame rates. So now, the Panasonic GH6, what does it bring? Well, here are a lot of features that I truly love, but maybe the best feature is the ProRes recording. Don't know what really ProRes is? It's basically a really great codec that has this enormous wide container where you can put in your video file to. With that said, I mean, not all ProRes is made the same. Depending on what your camera can get out, that will also be the quality of your footage, of course. Now, there's the Kinefinity Mavo Edge only shoots in ProRes, and the footage from that camera is better than a lot of raw footage from other cameras. So having ProRes in a camera like this, I mean, I really love it, I have to say. So the thing with ProRes is that they're right now, when they launch the camera, there will only be ProRes in the 5.7K, but they will also be coming out with ProRes for like the other frame rates and the other resolutions. So you will have 4K or you will have ProRes at 4K, you will have ProRes at Full HD, you will have ProRes at the different frame rates, so they will be coming out with that, so that is such a nice thing. So the camera has a brand new sensor. It's a 25 megapixel new Micro Four Thirds sensor, which will bring you 5.7K video recording. Now, for me personally, the 5.7K isn't like the biggest deal. I'm very happy recording video at 4K, and for most people, I believe that that's probably the sweet spot between quality and large file sizes. It's been raining for like 4 days straight. I got out with this camera, I talked to the Panasonic reps, they told me that don't worry about that. I mean, I've been shooting with the GH5 for so long and I know what that camera is capable of when it comes to the moist and dust resistance. I've actually been in the rainforest in Costa Rica with it while it was pouring rain. I had I actually just had one GH5 with me then, and it survived without a problem. It was soaking wet, so that's that. I'm not really scared about that. 2 or so years ago, I made a video that I called the wish list for the Panasonic GH6, and I was looking at the Panasonic GH5 at that time and looking at the features that the next camera would give us. And astonishingly enough, I looked at the video just yesterday, and in that video, I will have it in the description below, there's really only one thing that Panasonic didn't give us, and that was the built-in ND filters, and that's really hard to give us in a Micro Four Thirds camera because of the really short flange distance. A thing that I wasn't too happy about with Panasonic GH5 was the lack of tally lights. A tally light is a light, and on the Panasonic GH6 we have 2 lights like that, one on the front and one on the back, that will show you when you're recording. Now, right now I'm recording on Panasonic S1H, and I can actually see that I am recording because I can see a red dot. We will also get an indicator on the screen that shows us that we are recording. Another thing, linear focusing and non-linear focusing. We had that option to switch between both of those modes. Those are 2 things that we really wanted in the camera like this. And having more accurate focus pulls while manually focusing. And in that video I was also talking about giving us some kind of a better format to recording in, and for me Apple ProRes is probably the best choice. As always, Panasonic will give us unlimited recording, which is great, and one of the biggest differences between the Panasonic GH5 and the GH6 is going to be that the GH6 has active cooling system like the Panasonic S1H, so when it does record at high resolutions or at high frame rates, it will prevent us from overheating. So let's see guys, right now I'm trying not to shoot the 4K 120, and that's a feature that I really love about the A7S III, and now we get it in the Panasonic GH6, and the GH6 is almost half the price of the A7S III. Now of course there are going to be other differentiators, but having 4K 120 in this camera, and also being able to shoot 4K 120 in RAW in a future update is actually a killer feature. So yeah, really nice. Also autofocus seems to be really nice when it comes to shooting in slow-mo. Now one of the things that we had on the Panasonic GH5, or one of the things that the Panasonic GH5 lacked, that we do have in the, oh, I'm shooting right now, that we have in the Panasonic GH6 is gonna be the ability to shoot in 120 with autofocus and also with sound. It might sound stupid because I mean, sometimes you want to be able to have the sound from the location where you're out, just to have like as a background noise or anything like that. If you need a siren, or you need an ambient, or you need just somebody walking by, or like a bike clock, or whatever you have, it's really nice to have that, even though a lot of the time maybe you're not using it. So that's a big feature to have. Now this camera also shoots in 300 frames per second in full HD, which is also crazy nice. One of the best features of the Panasonic GH5 has always been the IBIS. Now Panasonic has once again improved the IBIS, going from 5 stops or 5.5 stops to 7.5 stops in the Panasonic GH6. And I will be doing comparisons between the IBIS on the GH6 and the GH5 in the video that's coming very soon. So guys, I just wanted to see how the image stabilization is working on the Panasonic GH6. It has improved over the GH5, which also before was a very nice camera. So right now I'm shooting with the 10-25, which is actually quite a big camera. I don't have my switch pod on, but I will be trying to see that. But yeah, I'm just looking, can you actually use this camera for talking heads like this, straight autofocus? How stable is this image actually being? I am at, let's see, I am at 10 millimeters. So is this footage usable? Now the problems we have with the really good IBIS is that you sometimes do get a lot of wobbling in the corners. So that's really interesting to see if I can walk and have it wobble as little as possible. So everything is hand-hold. And honestly, for me, I mean, I like a little bit shakiness if I'm doing handhold, so yeah, that's that. And also if you're doing some kind of a vlog, you sometimes do need to, I mean, have a little bit shake in it. But of course, it's always nice to have a system where the IBIS takes a lot of the shake. And especially if you're doing handhold and you have like a tele lens, I'm gonna use the 12-60 and see how the image stabilization on that lens is, because you will be able to use dual IIS because that lens has IIS. The 10-25 doesn't have it, so yeah, I'm gonna try that out, of course. Another thing that's also a big difference between the GH5 and the GH6 is going to be the implementation of the rear screen. Now, if you ever use the Panasonic GH5, you will know that the flippy screen on that camera is really nice. But once again, Panasonic has given us exactly what we want. They have given us a tilt screen. That's actually really nice and really handy if you're shooting from low angles or if you're a photographer. But you also will have the ability to flip the screen if you're recording yourself. Now to be able to shoot like the highest resolution, the 5.7K in ProRes, and if you're using HQ mode, you will have to shoot with a CF Express card. And here I'm shooting with a Lexar card because that's the cards that I got to borrow from Panasonic. They told me that the Lexar cards are really reliable. I will be getting the Angelbird ones because I have been using those for such a long time. But once I get them and test them out, check my description to see how that went. I will probably be doing a video on that quite as soon as well. So the camera comes with two card slots, where the first one is the CF Express Type B card and the second one is a UHS-2 SD card. You will of course also be able to record RAW on the Panasonic GH6 if you're using a Ninja, which is really nice. And this is something that we probably are expecting by now. However, with a Ninja 5 Plus, you will be able to record RAW at 120 frames per second, which is a new feature, and this is because the Panasonic GH6 does have HDMI 2.1. So Panasonic has also given us a couple of other features. I don't have the XLR1 here, I have actually used it in the studio, but they have come and given us a couple of other features, such as the ability to actually get 4 channels coming out from the camera. So if you are shooting with the XLR1, you will get 2 channels coming in from that camera, so 1 for each XLR. You will also get 2 other channels coming out from the rest of the camera, so that is really great. So if you want to set up, let's say you have, you want to have 4 people mic'd up, you can actually do that straight into the Panasonic. Now, a first for a GH series camera is the inclusion of the V-Log, and this is not the V-Log L that you could buy with the GH5. This is actually the full V-Log that you get in the Panasonic S1 However, you will have to wait for the LUTs from Panasonic, because they are working on new LUTs for this camera that will match the sensor and the look of the camera. Here you can see I'm shooting with 10-25. I also have the new 25-50, which is like a sibling lens. Both come in at f1.7, and both are actually very good lenses for video, because you do have manual focus, they're very minimal in breathing, and they're also quite parfocal. I'm not sure if I would call them parfocal, because something is happening in the image when you're zooming in and zooming out. The focus will stay at the same place, but I'm not sure if it's like digitally enhanced or anything like that, so I have to try it out a little bit more with both those lenses. But when it comes to the image quality, they're really beautiful. They're photo lenses, so they're gonna get really sharp on you. If you more like the cinematic look, I would probably go with either the DZO Zoom Ling Loong lens, which is a very nice lens, it's a cinema lens, or like the Maker lenses, which are both nice and very cheap. But if you both want a photography lens and you want to shoot video on it, these lenses, you can't go wrong with them. Now a feature that Panasonic is going to give us in a firmware update is going to be the ability to record to an SSD through the USB-C cable, and this is actually a very nice feature. If you're doing long form recordings, you're recording like meetings, or you're recording sessions of some kind, this is going to be a really nice feature. However, you know that I'm also a big fan of Blackmagic cameras, and they also do have this ability to record straight to an SSD. However, I've seen in myself that I very seldom use this when I'm out shooting on the field, because I feel it a little bit clunky. But if I'm indoors and I'm stationary, this is such a great feature, and it's gonna come to the Panasonic GH6 very soon. So one hidden feature, at least that I didn't know about, was that on the Panasonic GH6, when you go to 200 or 300 frames per second, or I think it's probably 240 if you're shooting in NTSC, you get actually 10-bit, so it's full HD 10-bit 422, and that was actually a great surprise for me, because a lot of the times when you go to these higher frame rates on most of the cameras out there, you will most of the time get a worse codec with less color space and like that. So seeing that you actually get 422 out of this camera in 200 frames per second if you're shooting in PAL mode like I am, it's astonishing, and for me quite usable, even though it's full HD, and I very seldom shoot in full HD nowadays. But 200 frames per second, full HD, 422, all light codec, beautiful. I wasn't expecting that, so great on the Panasonic GH6. I would say that in the end, probably the most important thing in a camera is going to be the image quality, and the 5.6 ProRes honestly is very nice to work with. The latitude, you can feel it. You can manipulate the colors without getting any strange artifacts. This is a hallmark of a great codec. So if you ever shot with an expensive camera with a great codec, those are the hallmarks where you can really go in and play with the highlights, play with the midtones, play with the darkest parts of an image, go in and change the colors more or less however you want, and you still will have a great image. And this is something that I really feel that you will get in the ProRes 422 and HQ modes on this camera, and that was so nice really to see. So I would say that probably the image coming out from this camera is one of the best images coming out from a DSLR style camera, and I'm very impressed, and I'm really looking forward to being able to shoot in ProRes, also in 4K and in full HD, just to see the quality there as well. Yeah, so those were some of the features on the new Panasonic GH6. I'm gonna be shooting with it a lot more just to get a feel of the camera, but I mean, if you've ever used a Panasonic GH3, GH4, GH5, the GH6 will probably be very familiar to you. The buttons are basically at the same places. The menus are, honestly, I love the menus on the Panasonic cameras. It's really nice to go in there and find what you're looking for. It's very easy. Unfortunately, a lot of people talk about the Sonys. I'm still not a fan of the Sony menus. I know they've become better, but still, I'm not a fan. So guys, I've probably missed a couple of things in this video about this camera because there are so many things to talk about, but I have 5 or 6 videos coming out on the Panasonic GH6, so if you want to see those videos, don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any questions, or you would like me to do a specific test or make a special video, just ask me in the comments and I'll get back to you. So don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Until the next time, see you very soon, and bye bye.